At my birthday dinner, my sister stood up and said, "Tonight you have to know the truth." And she did not look at me. She looked straight at our parents. The table went quiet, the kind of quiet when you feel your own pulse in your ears. Even the clinking of glasses stopped. My son was about to ask for more water, and I saw him close his mouth when he felt the shift in the air. I remember sitting there with a fork in my hand, frozen halfway to my plate. I thought she was joking at first, that she was going to make one of her usual comments about me being the favorite child, or how Mom and Dad always spoiled me. But this time, there was no smile on her face. Her lips were pressed tight, her eyes sharp. I looked at my husband. He gave me this small, stiff smile, like he was trying to play it cool, but his hand tightened around his glass. I knew then that something was wrong, something more than a joke. The restaurant was too bright, too loud, but in that second it felt like the whole place was holding its breath. By the time we sat down for dinner, the only people left were family. My co-workers who had come for a quick toast were already gone, leaving just us, the ones bound by blood or marriage. That made the silence heavier. There was no one else to deflect it, no outsiders to soften the blow. It was only us. Waiters walked past. Couples at other tables were laughing, but around us it was silence. My sister shifted her weight, almost like she was ready for a fight. She didn't raise her voice, but she spoke slow, with purpose, making sure every word landed. "Tonight, you have to know the truth." And then she glanced at me only for a second before turning back to our parents. I felt the fork slip from my fingers onto the plate. The sound was too sharp. My mother's hands were under the table, twisted together in her lap. I noticed how white her knuckles were. My father's jaw moved, but he said nothing. "Truth about what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No one answered. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not my husband. I laughed then, but it was the kind of laugh that doesn't sound like laughter at all. I said, "If this is some kind of joke, it's a bad one." Still nothing. I kept staring at my parents. Mom's eyes were wet. Dad looked at the table, not at me. I knew that look, the one he gave when he had something to admit, but didn't want to say it first. My stomach turned cold. My birthday cake was on the side table, candles waiting to be lit, and for some reason, all I could think was that it suddenly looked ridiculous, like a child's party, like I was sitting in the wrong life. My sister folded her arms and leaned back in her chair. She was enjoying it, I could see that, not smiling, but satisfied, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. I whispered, "Mom?" She didn't speak. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. It was my father who finally looked at me. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then glanced at my sister, as if she had pushed him into a corner he had been avoiding for years. And all at once I realized something terrifying. Whatever this truth was, they had been carrying it together, and I was the only one outside of it. I felt every eye at that table on me. My husband, my son, even my sister's little girl, who looked up from her coloring book, sensing the tension. I told myself I could not break here. Not in front of everyone, not on my birthday. So I forced a smile, lifted my glass, and said, "Well, someone going to explain what this is about?" But no one raised their glass with me. No one moved. And then my sister spoke again. Calm, clear, almost cold. You deserved to hear it from them. My throat went dry. From them. From my parents. What could they possibly tell me that needed to come out like this, in front of everyone, in the middle of a birthday dinner? What secret had been waiting all these years, buried so deep that it was my sister, not them, who finally forced it into the open? And why did it feel like I was about to lose everything I thought I knew about my own life? The silence was unbearable, but in that stillness, my mind betrayed me. It pulled me back into the picture of my family I had always carried, the version of my life I believed in until that very second. I used to think we were close, not just in the way families say they are, but genuinely close. Every summer, we went to the same lake. It was our tradition. My dad insisted on renting the same cabin every year. He said it felt like ours, even though it never was. He taught me how to fish there. My mom packed too much food, always afraid we would run out. My sister teased me for being the golden child, while she sulked on the porch, pretending she was too old to join us. I thought she was just moody, jealous maybe. Now I wondered if she saw something back then I never even guessed. Birthdays were another tradition. We didn't do piles of gifts like other families. There was always one present, something they claimed was from all of them together. I used to think it was sweet, that it meant they agreed on what mattered, that they wanted me to feel it was thoughtful, united. My friends thought it was strange, but I defended it. I said, that's how my family shows love. Sitting there at my birthday dinner, I realized maybe it wasn't about love at all. Maybe it was about control. Maybe it was easier to hide behind one gift from all than explain why certain truths could never be unwrapped. My mom used to tell us, we never lie to our kids. Whatever happens, we tell you the truth. She said it so often it became a family motto. I repeated it without thinking. When my own son asked me once if Santa was real, I quoted her. I said, Grandma always says honesty first. I was proud of that, proud of being raised by people who valued truth. Looking across that table now, watching her eyes dart down, avoiding mine, I felt sick. That motto was a lie. And if that was a lie, what else had been? I thought about small things I used to laugh off. My sister's comments. She would roll her eyes when Mom cooked my favorite meal and not hers. She once muttered, "You always get the spotlight." I thought it was just sibling rivalry. Once in high school, she told me outright, "They love you more." I brushed it off, called her dramatic. But the way she looked tonight, the satisfaction, the sharpness in her voice, it told me maybe she hadn't been exaggerating. Maybe she had been choking on a truth I was blind to. I remembered how Dad always got quiet when people commented on family resemblance. A friend once said I had Mom's smile, and Dad changed the subject so fast it was awkward. At the time, I thought he was being humble, avoiding attention. But now, sitting there, it hit me differently. Maybe he was hiding. I remembered asking about old family albums once. Mom got tense, said she needed to sort them first. She never did. She told me some were lost in a move. I believed her. I always believed her. That was the worst part. I trusted them completely. Every word, every story, every explanation. I thought about the way I bragged about my parents, how I told friends, my family is different. We don't keep secrets. I repeated that so many times, confident, proud. And now I was staring at their faces and realizing the opposite was true. I looked around the table. My son, confused, shifting in his seat. My husband, silent, his hand still around his glass like he was holding on to it too hard. My sister, arms crossed, her expression tight but smug. My parents, both shrinking into themselves, and me, sitting there, realizing that maybe my entire childhood had been built on something I was never allowed to see. The weight of that thought pressed down on me until I couldn't hold back anymore. I said, "You always told me honesty came first. So if that was true, tell me now. What truth?" My voice came out sharper than I meant, but no one answered. My dad's lips moved, but nothing came. My mom's hands twisted tighter in her lap. My sister kept her eyes on them, not me, waiting for them to break. The silence that followed was worse than anything they could have said. Because in that silence, I understood something I never wanted to believe. Maybe the family I thought I had never really existed. And if that was true, then everything I thought I knew about myself was already falling apart. No one spoke. My question hung in the air, unanswered, and the silence made me feel like I was trapped in some kind of cruel joke. But this wasn't new. Not really. The more I sat there, the more fragments of the past started flashing in my head. Moments that had felt odd but harmless at the time. Moments I had buried because I trusted them too much to think there could be anything behind it. It had started with my sister. For months before this night, she had been dropping little comments that never made sense to me. Subtle things, not enough to call out directly, but sharp enough that I remembered them. Once we were at her house drinking coffee, and she said, "Have you ever wondered why your middle name on your birth certificate doesn't match Dad's?" She said it like it was a joke, like she was teasing me about not paying attention. I laughed, told her she was ridiculous. I thought she was just trying to stir something up. But she didn't laugh with me. She just smiled in that way she does when she's holding something back. I told myself she was jealous, like always, looking for cracks that weren't there. I didn't ask questions. Another time, she said, "Funny how you never notice certain things about our family." I asked what she meant, but she changed the subject, talking about her kids' school. It bothered me for an hour, maybe 2, and then I let it go. That was how it always worked. She would throw out something strange, then walk away from it, and I would be left confused but unwilling to chase it. The truth is, I didn't want to chase it. I wanted my family to be exactly what I believed they were. I didn't want cracks, because cracks meant something could fall apart. But then, the week before my birthday, something happened that shook me more than her comments ever did. My mom called me in the evening. It wasn't unusual, she called often, but her voice that night was different, quieter. I had barely picked up the phone before she asked, "Are you sure you want to celebrate with all of us this year?" It caught me off guard. "Of course," I said. "Why wouldn't I?" She hesitated, and then she said, "I just wondered if maybe you'd prefer something smaller, just with your husband and son, more private." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. "Mom, you know I like when everyone's together. Why are you asking me this?" Her silence was long enough that I checked my phone screen, thinking the call had dropped. Then she spoke again, softer. "I just don't want the evening to turn into something it shouldn't." I asked her what she meant, but she brushed it off, pretending she hadn't said it. She switched the subject to what kind of cake I wanted, and after a minute, she was back to her normal self. But when I hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, unsettled. For the first time, I wondered if there was something I wasn't supposed to know. I told my husband about it that night. I repeated her words, trying to laugh, but I was looking for reassurance. I wanted him to say it was nothing, that I was overthinking. He gave me a quick hug and said, "Your mom just worries too much." But he didn't look me in the eye when he said it. I noticed. After that call, I kept thinking back to my sister's questions, the middle name, the funny how you never noticed comment. Put together, they didn't feel harmless anymore. I went to bed uneasy. I tried to brush it away, but I couldn't stop hearing my mom's voice asking if I was sure about celebrating with the family. It sounded less like a question and more like a warning. Even the day before my birthday, she texted me again. Don't stress if you change your mind. We can do something simple. I remember staring at the message, typing out a reply, and erasing it twice before finally writing, "No, it's fine. I want to see everyone." She answered with a thumbs up emoji. That wasn't like her. She always used words. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a crack in the ground under me. By the time my birthday arrived, I had convinced myself it was nothing. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself families were complicated and sisters said weird things. I didn't let myself think about it when I got dressed for the dinner, when I looked in the mirror and told myself it was going to be a good night. But now, sitting at that table with my sister staring at our parents and my mom's hands twisting in her lap, I realized those little cracks had been warnings. She had been afraid of this night. My sister had been planning it, and I had walked straight into it without a clue. I sat back in my chair, my chest tight. The memory of her voice on the phone played over and over in my head. Are you sure you want to celebrate with all of us? Why would my mother, the woman who insisted on family dinners, the woman who preached honesty, suddenly suggest I celebrate without them? What exactly had she been afraid of? I looked at her across the table. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and in that silence, I felt the truth pressing against me, waiting to be forced out. My sister's voice cut through the silence, steady, deliberate, almost rehearsed. You're adopted. The words struck me harder than anything in my life. I stared at her, waiting for the smirk, the roll of her eyes, the laugh that always followed her jabs. But none of it came. She sat still, calm, her chin slightly raised. She didn't look at me. She looked at our parents. The room shifted. I could feel it in the way everyone froze. My son's fork clinked against his plate, and he didn't move to pick it up. My husband kept staring at his glass, as if he could will himself invisible. My mother's napkin was pressed so hard to her face that her hand trembled. I waited for someone to contradict her. I wanted my dad to slam his fist on the table, my mom to call it nonsense, for the world to reset itself in an instant. Nothing came. I whispered one word. What? My sister didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. The damage had been done with the first strike. I turned to my mom. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying, but still silent. She looked at my father like she was begging him to step in. Finally, my dad spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut straight through me. It's true. I blinked at him. My whole body stiffened. What are you saying? You're agreeing with her? That's all you have to say? He nodded slowly, finally raising his eyes to mine. It's true. I felt my fork slip from my hand and hit the plate with a sharp sound. My son startled at the noise, staring at me like he didn't understand what was happening, but could sense it was something huge. I wanted to reach for him, to shield him from this moment, but I couldn't move. You're telling me I'm adopted? My voice cracked. And you say it like it's nothing? My father pressed his hands flat against the table, as though it steadied him. His jaw tightened. Yes, but there's more you don't know. The room spun. His words weren't a comfort. They were worse. More. There was more? I shook my head, my breath shallow. More? How can there be more? My mom let out a sob, loud enough that people at the next table turned to look. She covered her mouth with her napkin again, her face red, her body trembling. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to stop him. I looked at my husband. He still wasn't looking at me. His knuckles were white against the glass he held, his body stiff. Something about the way he avoided my eyes sent a deeper chill through me. He wasn't shocked. Not like me. My gaze went back to my sister. She sat with her arms crossed, leaning back in her chair, her lips tight, not smiling, not laughing, just satisfied. It wasn't joy. It was something colder. She had wanted this moment. She had set it in motion, and now she was watching it burn. I gripped the edge of the table to keep myself steady. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why would you keep this from me? My father didn't answer. My mother's sobs filled the silence. My sister leaned back even further in her chair, her expression unchanged. I pushed my chair back suddenly, the legs scraping the floor. The sound made everyone flinch. My son whispered, "Mom?" His little hand reached toward me, but I couldn't look at him. Not yet. The cake sat on a side table, candles waiting to be lit. The sight of it made me feel sick. A celebration, right in the middle of my family collapsing. I turned back to my father. "What more?" I demanded, my voice rising. "If you've been lying my whole life, then tell me everything, right now." He looked at me, his mouth opening slightly, but no words came. His lips pressed shut again, his silence even heavier than his confession. My mother shook her head, tears falling fast. "Please," she whispered, her voice muffled by the napkin. It was the first word she had spoken. "Please, not now." Not now? My entire life had just been ripped apart, and she wanted to postpone the truth. I slammed my hand against the table without thinking, the plates rattling. Not now? When? Then? You've had my entire life to tell me, and you chose tonight, in front of everyone, to stay silent again? The people at the next table were openly staring now, but no one at mine seemed to notice. We were locked inside the storm, and nothing outside of it mattered. My father looked down at his hands. "We were going to tell you." "When?" My voice cracked again. "When I was 50. When you thought I could handle it? You let me live my whole life not knowing who I am." He didn't answer. My mother cried harder. My sister finally leaned forward, placing her elbows on the table, as if she was preparing for the next move in a game. The silence stretched again, and in it, I realized something worse than being adopted, worse than the word itself. Every person at this table already knew. Everyone but me. I looked at my husband again. His jaw was tight, his eyes still down. My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to leave, to disappear, but I couldn't move. I was trapped in the seat where my life had shattered, staring at the people who had kept it from me. And my father's words echoed in my head. "It's true, but there's more you don't know." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about being adopted. This was about everything I thought I knew, and all the secrets still waiting to come out. I sat frozen, waiting for my father to keep speaking, to finally explain what more even meant. But he didn't. My mother kept crying quietly beside him, her hands shaking against the napkin, and my sister stayed still, almost smug, like she had delivered her blow and had nothing else to add. The silence stretched on, thick and unbearable. Inside, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the glass in front of me, demand answers, force them all to look at me and finally say everything. But I didn't. I stayed where I was, rigid, my face blank, my voice trapped in my throat, because there were people watching. Not just strangers in the restaurant, friends, co-workers, my son, my sister's daughter. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was a public scene, one that could not be undone once I let myself react. So I forced myself to breathe, forced my lips to curve into something that looked like a smile, though my teeth ached from holding it. My chest felt like it might crack open, but I lifted my glass anyway. "Thank you for the surprise," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded light, cheerful, fake. My sister's eyes narrowed. My mother looked at me in shock. My father blinked as though he couldn't understand what I was doing. But no one called me out. No one stopped me. They let me sit there with that smile, pretending nothing had happened, pretending I wasn't about to fall apart. I toasted to nothing in particular, just raising the glass as if that could cover the hole that had just opened under us. My co-workers smiled awkwardly. One of them clapped. My son clapped too, uncertain but copying what he saw. Inside, everything collapsed. I kept nodding, kept smiling, kept pushing words out like they belonged to someone else. I thanked people for coming. I joked about getting older. I asked my sister's daughter if she liked her coloring book. I poured my son more water. Every movement was mechanical, deliberate, hiding the storm I couldn't let out. I watched my mother dab at her face again, trying to calm herself down. My father stayed silent, staring into his lap. My sister leaned back, smirking slightly when she caught my eye. The hardest part wasn't the lie itself. It was the act I was forced to put on in that moment. The mask I couldn't take off because if I cracked, the entire night would shatter. I smiled as the cake was brought to the table. Candles lit. Everyone sang. I blew them out with my son sitting proudly beside me, clapping for me, looking up at me like nothing had changed. But everything had. The sweetness of the frosting turned bitter in my mouth. I chewed, swallowed, smiled again. I kept pretending. I kept thanking people for the gifts, laughing at jokes I didn't hear, nodding at conversations I couldn't follow. My body was at that table, but my mind was far away. It circled around the same words, over and over. You're adopted. It's true. But there's more you don't know. The words echoed louder than the singing, louder than the laughter around me, louder than the clinking glasses. I watched my husband. He spoke little, but when he did, it was forced, his eyes never once meeting mine. Every time I looked at him, he looked away. It was small, but I noticed. I noticed because I was watching everyone now. Every breath, every blink, every twitch of their faces. I became a shadow at that table, my own presence hidden behind a mask, my true self shrinking back to watch them. I didn't speak unless I had to. I studied my sister's smirk, my father's silence, my mother's trembling hands, my husband's averted gaze. I thought about the moment earlier in the week when my mother had asked if I was sure I wanted to celebrate with the family. Now I knew why. She hadn't been worried about a fight. She had been afraid of this exact moment, afraid of the truth spilling out in front of everyone. And yet here we were. I cut slices of cake. I placed one in front of my sister's daughter, another in front of my son. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Something inside me had locked shut. People around us started leaving one by one. Friends excused themselves politely. Co-workers smiled tightly, offering quick congratulations before slipping out the door. The laughter faded, the chatter dimmed, and the table grew smaller. When the last of them left, only my family remained. My son sat beside me, drowsy, his head leaning against my arm. My sister packed crayons back into her daughter's backpack, glancing at me every so often with that same satisfied look. My parents sat across from me, silent, broken, their hands barely moving. I wanted to slam my fist against the table, to scream until the whole restaurant turned to watch, to force them to say every word they had buried all these years. But instead, I smiled again, a polite, empty smile, and thanked them for dinner. No one spoke as we stood to leave. No one explained. No one apologized. On the outside, I was calm. I hugged my son, took his hand, and walked to the car. My face was steady, my movements smooth. To anyone watching, I looked like a woman leaving her birthday dinner, nothing more. But inside, the collapse was complete. And I knew something for certain. If my father was right, if there really was more, I would find it. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I would watch. I would listen. And I would wait. Because in that moment, I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was the only one in the room who hadn't known the truth. And I wasn't going to let that stay the case. The restaurant emptied slowly, but my chest stayed tight even after the last chairs scraped the floor and the door shut behind our friends. My son tugged on my hand, yawning, asking if we could go home. I nodded, smiling at him, because he didn't deserve to see what was boiling inside me. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. When I saw my sister slip her daughter's jacket on and sling the backpack over her shoulder, I knew I couldn't let the night end without confronting her. She had thrown the bomb, sat back, and watched me implode. She wasn't walking away untouched. I waited until my parents stood near the entrance, distracted with the check, and until my husband took my son outside to the car. Then I stepped close to her, my voice low enough that no one else would hear. "Why did you do that?" She didn't act surprised. She didn't even flinch. She just looked at me with the same cold expression she'd worn all night. Then, slowly, her lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Because I'm tired of being the shadow," she said. I stared at her. "What are you talking about? You've always been the golden one, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. Do you know what it's like growing up in the same house and realizing every joke, every story, every family tradition somehow centers around you?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, slicing into me. She wasn't ranting. She was calm, like she had carried the speech for years and was finally unrolling it. I shook my head. "That's not true. You've always—" She cut me off with a small laugh. Don't play dumb. You know it. You just never wanted to admit it." Her daughter tugged at her sleeve, but she ignored her. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "I wanted to see what would happen if everyone finally knew the truth," she continued. "If you'd still be their golden girl. If you'd still sit there with that perfect little life while the rest of us got scraps." The words stung, but it wasn't just what she said. It was the way she said it, calm, cold. Like this wasn't just anger. This was envy that had been fermenting for decades. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was wrong, that she was twisting things. But something in her expression told me arguing would be useless. And then she leaned closer, her voice dropping so low I almost missed it. "By the way, your husband knew. Mom told him before you two even got married. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My throat closed. What? She pulled her daughter's hand into hers, straightening up. You heard me. He knew. He's known for years. I felt my whole body freeze. You're lying. She shook her head slowly, her eyes glittering with something cruel. Am I? I grabbed her arm before she could turn away. Why would Mom tell him? Because, she said, jerking her arm free, they wanted to make sure you married someone who could live with the truth, someone who wouldn't walk out later when you found out. Guess that plan didn't work out the way they hoped. I stared at her, my pulse racing, my stomach twisting so hard I thought I might be sick right there. She tugged her daughter's jacket zipper up, glanced back at me once more, and said, Good luck, golden girl. Then she walked out, leaving me standing in the middle of the restaurant, my chest burning. My husband knew. The thought slammed into me again and again as I walked outside, as I buckled my son into the car, as I slid into the passenger seat. My husband asked softly, You okay? His hand reached for mine, but I pulled it back before he could touch me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My sister's words were ringing too loud. He started the car, driving us home in silence, and I sat with my arms crossed, my eyes fixed out the window, my mind spiraling. Every memory of our marriage, every fight, every anniversary, every time he had promised me honesty, they all twisted inside me, poisoned by the possibility that he had been keeping the secret the entire time. I thought of the night my mom had called, asking if I really wanted to celebrate with family. I thought of how strange my husband's face had been when I told him, how he hugged me without looking me in the eye. He knew. I thought of the way he sat at that table tonight, quiet, pale, avoiding me. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't blindsided like I was. He knew. And the worst part wasn't just the lie itself. It was that every time I had looked at him as my ally, the person who would stand with me against the world, he had already been standing on the other side. By the time we pulled into our driveway, my hands were shaking so hard I tucked them under my legs so my son wouldn't notice. He was half asleep in the back seat, his head tilted against the window. My husband turned off the engine and finally looked at me. His face was tense, his mouth pressed tight. We'll talk later, okay? He said softly. I nodded, but it wasn't agreement. It was the only way to keep from breaking right there in front of my child. Inside, I was unraveling. Because my sister had been right about one thing. Everyone knew. Everyone but me. And now I wasn't sure who I hated more. Her, for throwing the match, or him, for standing in the dark with it the whole time. The house was dark when we walked in. My son trudged upstairs with his stuffed animal, half asleep, not realizing that my world had cracked open in the car. I waited until I heard his bedroom door close before I turned to my husband. Did you know? The words came out flat, heavy, without room for excuses. He froze near the doorway, his jacket still on. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't pretend to be confused. His shoulders slumped, and he lowered himself onto the couch. He buried his face in his hands. Yes. I stood there, the space between us wide and suffocating. Since when? His voice was muffled. Your mom told me, before our wedding. I blinked. I thought I had misheard. Before our wedding? He lifted his head finally, his eyes bloodshot. He looked older in that moment, beaten down. They wanted me to know. They said it was important that I understood before committing my life to you. They said it would be worse if you found out later, and I wasn't prepared. I laughed. It wasn't really a laugh. It was sharp and hollow. So everyone knew. Everyone. My parents, my sister, you. The only person who didn't know was me. He reached toward me, but I stepped back. I didn't want to keep it from you, he said quickly. I hated it, but they begged me. They said you were too emotional, that it would crush you. They swore they would tell you when the time was right. The time was right? My voice broke. When? After 35 years? After I've lived my entire life believing in a lie? His jaw tightened. I thought they would tell you sooner. I thought it wasn't my place. Not your place? I snapped. You married me, knowing the truth about me that I didn't know. You shared a bed with me, built a life with me, watched me tell our son that my parents never lied to me. And all that time, you sat there with the truth in your pocket. He closed his eyes, pressing his palms together. I was trying to protect you. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. No, you were protecting them. You chose their secret over my life. You chose their comfort over my right to know who I am. The room was silent, except for my shaky breathing. I looked at him. This man I had trusted more than anyone, the man I believed was my one safe place. And I saw him differently. He wasn't my ally. He had been part of their circle all along. I whispered, "Do you know what that feels like? To realize your entire marriage was built on a secret you didn't know you were living inside?" He didn't answer. His face crumpled, but no words came. I stood there for a long time, the weight of it sinking deeper. My parents had lied. My sister had weaponized it. And my husband, the one person I thought would always be honest with me, had been in on it from the very beginning. I sat down across from him, my hands trembling in my lap. "What else do you know?" He looked up, startled. "Nothing. That's it." But I didn't believe him. Not entirely. Because if they had trusted him with this, what else had they whispered behind closed doors? How many times had they sat together, talking about me, deciding what I could and couldn't handle? I pictured them. My mom, wringing her hands, saying I was too fragile. My dad, quiet but firm, insisting the secret stay hidden. My husband, nodding along, agreeing to play his role. My life decided in a room I wasn't even in. I asked again, louder this time, "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "Because I thought I would lose you." I stared at him. "You already did." The silence after that felt final. I stood up, walked upstairs, and closed the bedroom door behind me. He didn't follow. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet house. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, felt louder. I thought about my parents, about my sister, about the smug look on her face when she told me he knew. I thought about my wedding day, the vows we said, the way he held my hand. All of it replayed in my head, poisoned now. The truth wasn't just that I was adopted. The truth was that I was the only one who hadn't been trusted to handle the truth. And that betrayal cut deeper than the word adopted ever could. I realized, sitting in the dark, that nothing would be the same again. My marriage wasn't safe. My family wasn't safe. I wasn't safe in the story I thought belonged to me. By morning, I felt hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just moved through the motions, making breakfast for my son, packing his lunch, brushing his hair, while my husband sat at the table in silence, staring at his coffee. He tried to catch my eye once, but I didn't let him. When my son left for school, I finally looked at my husband. "I don't know if I can forgive you," He swallowed hard. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head. You already had your chance. You chose them over me. The truth was out now, and there was no taking it back. And I knew I couldn't stay in a life where I was the only one living blind. After that night, nothing went back to normal. I stopped answering my parents' calls. At first they rang every day, then every few days, then just once a week. Each time I stared at the phone until it went silent. My mom left voicemails, her voice shaking, begging me to call back. My dad didn't speak at all. His silence filled the messages like another form of pressure. I blocked my sister. No calls, no texts, no social media. She tried once from another number, sending me a short message. You're welcome. I deleted it without replying. My husband and I moved through the house like strangers. We still lived under the same roof for our son's sake, but the distance was permanent. We talked about schedules, bills, school events, but never about what mattered. The nights grew long and quiet, and I slept on the edge of the bed, my body turned away from his. I thought I could build a wall around myself and survive inside it. But then, one evening, months later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to see my father standing there, holding a small cardboard box. He looked older than I remembered, his hair thinner, his posture bent. He didn't ask to come in. He just stood there on the porch, the box pressed against his chest. I won't stay, he said quietly. I need to give you this. I didn't move. I didn't know whether to slam the door or reach for the box. He set it down gently at my feet. You have the right to know how she looked. Before I could answer, he turned and walked back to his car. He didn't wait for me to pick it up. He didn't try to explain. He just left. I stood there in the doorway, staring at the box until the sound of his engine faded. Finally, I bent down and carried it inside. I set it on the kitchen table. My hands hovered above the flaps for a long time before I forced myself to open it. Inside were photographs. Old, slightly faded, but clear enough. A woman smiled back at me. Dark hair, gentle eyes like mine. On one photo, she was holding a baby in her arms, me. Her expression was soft, protective. The way she looked at me made my throat close. There were others. Her sitting at a desk, her standing in front of a building, her laughing with someone I didn't recognize. But the one of her holding me was the one I couldn't look away from. I felt tears sting my eyes, but none of them fell. My hands shook as I put the photo back into the box. I closed the lid slowly, as though sealing something I wasn't ready to face. For years, my parents had erased her. They had made sure her name was never spoken, her picture never shown, her presence never acknowledged. And now, suddenly, they wanted me to have her back. But it wasn't a gift. It was another kind of loss. Because she was gone, and I would never hear her voice, never ask her questions, never know what she wanted from me. I stared at the closed box on the table for a long time. My husband walked in from the living room, saw it, and froze. He didn't ask what it was. He didn't need to. I picked it up and carried it to the closet in the guest room, setting it on the top shelf where I wouldn't see it every day. But even hidden away, I felt its weight. Nights became worse. I lay awake thinking of her face, of the way she looked at me in that one picture. I wondered what she sounded like when she laughed, what perfume she wore, what her favorite song was. I wondered what she thought in the moment that picture was taken, holding me so close. And then I thought of my parents, cutting her out of my life. erasing her, deciding I didn't need to know her. I couldn't forgive them. I couldn't forgive my sister. And I couldn't forgive my husband for knowing all of it and letting me live in the dark. The years passed, but the box stayed in that closet. I never threw it away, but I couldn't bring myself to open it again either. I thought ignoring it would make the questions fade. But instead, the silence around her became louder, because she was my mother, my real mother, and she had been hidden from me, stolen from me, like she had never existed at all. And no matter how much I tried to live my life, I couldn't shake the truth. Every time I saw my own reflection, I was staring at her eyes. Eyes that had been erased. Eyes that had come back to me too late. I never opened the box again, but it never left me. It sat in the closet, collecting dust, while my thoughts circled it every night. I kept living, but not the way I used to. I went to work, packed lunches, drove my son to school, answered neighbors when they waved, but I felt like I was watching my life from outside of it. I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't tell friends. The only people who knew were the same ones who had kept me blind. My parents, my sister, my husband, that circle, that pact I had never been part of. I started writing things down, not for them, not to send to anyone, just for me. I wrote questions that had no answers. Why didn't you tell me? What were you afraid of? Did you think I was weak? Did you think you were protecting me or protecting yourselves? Sometimes I wrote to her, the woman in the photographs. I called her my mother, even though my mom was still alive and calling me every week. I asked her things I'd never know. What did your voice sound like? What books did you love? Did you hold me long before you gave me away, or only at the end? Every story I heard was different. My father told me she had died when I was 2. My mother whispered through tears that she had given me up, unable to raise me. My sister said some truths were better left buried, that I should be grateful I was raised in a family that wanted me. But the photographs didn't answer. They just stared back at me in silence. The hardest part wasn't even that I was adopted. It was that I was the last to know, the one left out of the story, that people I trusted with my whole life decided for me, rewrote my history, turned me into a character in a story I didn't agree to. My marriage didn't survive. There was no screaming, no dramatic fight, just the slow unraveling of trust until there was nothing left to hold us together. He moved out. My son asked questions I didn't know how to answer. Why isn't Dad staying? I told him we both loved him. That was all I could give him. I stopped seeing my parents. I didn't block their number, but I didn't answer either. Holidays came and went without calls. My mom sent messages that grew shorter over time. We love you. We're thinking of you. Please come home. I deleted them all. The only thing I kept was the box. Sometimes at night, when the house was quiet, I'd walk into the guest room, open the closet, and touch it. I never pulled the pictures out. I just rested my hand on the lid, as if the weight of my palm could connect me to her. Other nights, I woke up from dreams of her. Dreams of voices I'd never heard, faces I only knew through photographs, hands reaching for me that I could never hold. And then came the darker thoughts. What if she wasn't dead? What if my father lied? What if she had other children, half-brothers, half-sisters, who grew up knowing her, while I was raised to believe she never existed? What if I was just a story rewritten by other people's choices? I'd lie awake at 3 a.m, my chest tight, wondering if somewhere out there was a family that belonged to me, blood that matched mine, names I was supposed to know. And the most terrifying part was that I would never have the answers. My mother, the one who raised me, used to say, "We never lie to our kids." She said it so many times I believed it like scripture. And yet the only constant in my life had been the lie. I don't tell this for sympathy. I don't tell it for advice. I tell it because it's the only way to breathe sometimes. Because if I don't put the words somewhere, they stay trapped inside me, clawing their way out in the dark. So here I am, saying it out loud into the void. I was the last to know who I was. My parents lied. My sister weaponized it. My husband carried it. And now all that's left is me, a box of photographs, and a face that looks like mine but belongs to a stranger. I don't know what's worse, that I'll never know the full truth, or that everyone else already does. What would you do in my place? Please write your thoughts in the comments. I will be happy to read them.